4 men are in the hospital waiting room waiting for their babies. The nurse walks in and tells the first man, "Congratulations, you're having twins." The man responds, "That's a crazy coincidence. I work for the Minnesota Twins." The nurse tells the second man, "Congratulations, you're having triplets." The man responds, "That's a crazy coincidence. I work for the 3M Company." The nurse tells the third man, "Congratulations, you're having quadruplets." The third man responds, "That's a crazy coincidence. I work at the Four Seasons Hotel." The fourth man is screaming and banging his head on the wall. The nurse asks him, "What's wrong?" He responds, "I screwed up. I work at 7UP." 2 little kids are in a hospital, lying on stretchers next to each other outside the operating room. The first kid leans over and asks, "What are you in here for?" The second kid says, "I'm in here to get my tonsils out and I'm a little nervous." The first kid says, "You've got nothing to worry about. I had that done when I was 4. They put you to sleep and when you wake up they give you lots of Jell-O and ice cream. It's a breeze." The second kid then asks, "What are you here for?" The first kid says, "A circumcision." And the second kid says, "Whoa, I had that done when I was born. I couldn't walk for a year." 3 new fathers, an Englishman, a Welshman, and an Indian, are looking at their newborn babies' cribs in the hospital. All 3 babies are side by side, and the fathers are congratulating each other on their new arrivals. Just then, a nurse enters the room, looking quite flustered. "I'm sorry," says the nurse, "but we've lost the paperwork and can't tell you whose baby is whose." The 3 fathers look at each other and agree that the only possible solution to avoid embarrassing the hospital is to just choose a baby, take it home, and make sure it is loved as any child should be. The Englishman steps forward and exclaims, "I would like to choose first." The other 2 fathers roll their eyes but agree. The Englishman walks to the 3 babies and, without any hesitation, picks up what is quite obviously the Indian man's child. As the Englishman goes to leave, he catches the eye of the Indian and says, "Sorry, mate, but one of those 2 babies back there is Welsh and I can't take that risk." A psychologist visits an engineer in his hospital bed. The guy had just jumped off a bridge. The psychologist says, "Hey there, Ahmed. I'm Dr. Adams. How you feeling today?" And the engineer replies, "In pain, but lucky to be alive, I guess." Dr. Adams wants to help, so she asks the engineer about his life. The engineer tells her he came from Libya a year ago. Life in Libya was rough, especially after Gaddafi was out. He told her about the power outages in Tripoli and studying electrical engineering by candlelight. He finally got good enough to get a job in America. So he kisses his girlfriend goodbye, tells his family not to worry about food anymore. He'll start sending his paychecks home, and hops on a plane to California. He's working 100-hour weeks at a startup called TechWave, believes fully in the company, even puts all his money into the company's stock. The psychologist, who's heard of TechWave, thought they were doing great. Asks him, "But TechWave is the new hot thing. Why did you jump?" "I thought they were too, but this morning I got a text saying the company would be closed for Good Friday." An attorney arrived home late after a very tough day trying to get a stay of execution. His last-minute plea for clemency to the governor had failed and he was feeling worn out and depressed. As soon as he walked through the door at home, his wife started on him about, "What time of night is this to be getting home? Where have you been? Dinner is cold and I'm not reheating it." And on and on and on. Too shattered to play his usual role in this familiar ritual, he poured himself a shot of whiskey and headed off for a long, hot soak in the bathtub, pursued by the predictable, sarcastic remarks as he dragged himself up the stairs. While he was in the bath, the phone rang. The wife answered and was told that her husband's client, James Edward Wright, had been granted a stay of execution after all. Finally realizing what a terrible day he must have had, she decided to go upstairs and give him the good news. As she opened the bathroom door, she was greeted by the sight of her husband, bent over naked, drying his legs and feet. "They're not hanging right tonight," she said. He whirled around and screamed, "For the love of God, woman, don't you ever stop!" A 90-year-old man goes for a physical and all of his tests come back normal. The doctor says, "Larry, everything looks great. How are you doing mentally and emotionally? Are you at peace with God?" Larry replies, "God and I are tight. He knows I have poor eyesight, so he's fixed it so when I get up in the middle of the night to go to the bathroom, poof, the light goes on. When I'm done, poof, the light goes off. Wow, that's incredible," the doctor says. A little later in the day, the doctor calls Larry's wife. "Bonnie," he says, "Larry's doing fine. But I had to call you because I'm in awe of his relationship with God. Is it true that he gets up during the night and poof, the light goes on in the bathroom, and when he's done, poof, the light goes off?" "Oh, sweet Jesus," exclaims Bonnie. "He's peeing in the refrigerator again." A nun, badly needing to use the restroom, walked into a local Hooters. The place was hopping with music and loud conversation, and every once in a while, the lights would turn off. Each time the lights would go out, the place would erupt into cheers. However, when the revelers saw the nun, the room went dead silent. She walked up to the bartender and asked, "May I please use the restroom?" The bartender replied, "Okay, but I should warn you that there is a statue of a naked man in there wearing only a fig leaf." "Well, in that case, I'll just look the other way," said the nun. So the bartender showed the nun to the back of the restaurant. After a few minutes, she came back out and the whole place stopped just long enough to give the nun a loud round of applause. She went to the bartender and said, "Sir, I don't understand. Why did they applaud for me just because I went to the restroom?" "Well, now they know you're one of us," said the bartender. "Would you like a drink?" "No, thank you, but I still don't understand," said the puzzled nun. "You see," laughed the bartender, "every time someone lifts the fig leaf on that statue, the lights go out. Now, how about that drink?" A very attractive lady goes up to a bar in a quiet rural pub. She gestures alluringly to the bartender, who comes over immediately. When he arrives, she seductively signals that he should bring his face closer to hers. When he does, she begins to gently caress his full beard. "Are you the manager?" she asks, softly stroking his face with both hands. "Actually, no," the man replies. "Can you get him for me? I need to speak to him," she says, running her hands beyond his beard and into his hair. "Can't," breathes the bartender. "He's not here. Is there anything I can do?" "Yes, there is. I need you to give him a message," she continues, running her forefinger across the bartender's lips and slyly popping a couple of her fingers into his mouth and allowing him to suck them gently. "What should I tell him?" the bartender manages to say. "Tell him," she whispers, "there is no toilet paper, hand soap, or paper towels in the ladies' room." Sheila, the Aussie housewife, got out of the shower and slipped on the bathroom floor. Instead of falling over forwards or backwards, she did the splits and suction cupped herself to the floor. She yelled out for her husband, "Bruce! Bruce!" and he came running in. "Bruce, I bloody suctioned myself to the floor," she said. "'Struth, Sheila," Bruce said and tried to pull her up. "You're stuck fast, girl. I'll go across the road and get my mate Cobber." They came back and they both tried to pull her up from the floor. "No way! We can't do it," Cobber said. "So let's try Plan B." "Plan B?" exclaimed Bruce. "What's that?" "I'll go home and get my hammer and chisel and we'll break the tiles under her," replied Cobber. "Spot on," Bruce said. "While you're doing that, I'll stay here and play with her nipples." "Play with her nipples?" Cobber said. "Not exactly a good time for that, mate." "No?" Bruce replied. "But I reckon if I can get her wet enough, we can slide her into the kitchen where the tiles are a lot cheaper." Mr. Smith goes to the doctor's office to collect his wife's test results. The lab tech says to him, "I'm sorry, sir, but there has been a bit of a mix-up and we have a problem. When we sent the samples from your wife to the lab, the samples from another Mrs. Smith were sent as well, and we are now uncertain which one is your wife's. Frankly, that's either bad or terrible." "What do you mean?" "Well, one Mrs. Smith has tested positive for Alzheimer's disease and the other for AIDS. We can't tell which is your wife." "That's terrible. Can we do the test over?" asked Mr. Smith. "Normally, yes, but you have an HMO, and they won't pay for these expensive tests more than once." "Well, what am I supposed to do now?" The HMO recommends that you drop your wife off in the middle of town. If she finds her way home, don't sleep with her. A police officer pulls over a speeding car. The officer says, "I clocked you at 80 miles per hour, sir." The driver replies, "Gee, officer, I had it on cruise control at 60. Perhaps your radar gun needs calibrating." Not looking up from her knitting, the driver's wife says, "Now don't be silly, dear. You know that this car doesn't have cruise control." As the officer writes out the ticket, the driver looks over at his wife and growls, "Can't you please keep your mouth shut for once?" The wife smiles demurely and says, "Well, dear, you should be thankful your radar detector went off when it did, or your speed would have been higher." As the officer makes out the second ticket for the illegal radar detector, the man glowers at his wife and says through clenched teeth, "Woman, can't you keep your mouth shut?" The officer frowns and says, "And I notice that you're not wearing your seatbelt, sir. That's an automatic $75 fine." The driver says, "Yeah, well, you see, officer, I had it on, but I took it off when you pulled me over so that I could get my license out of my back pocket." The wife says, "Now, dear, you know very well that you didn't have your seatbelt on. You never wear your seatbelt when you're driving." And as the police officer is writing out the third ticket, the driver turns to his wife and barks, "Will you please be quiet?" The officer looks over at the woman and asks, "Does your husband always talk to you this way, ma'am?" She replies, "Only when he's been drinking." After 37 years of marriage, Jake dumped his wife for his young secretary. His new girlfriend demanded that they live in Jake and Edith's multi-million-dollar home. Since Jake had better lawyers, he prevailed. He gave Edith, his now ex-wife, just 3 days to move out. She spent the first day packing her belongings into boxes and crates. On the second day, she had 2 movers come and collect her things. On the third day, she sat down for the last time at their beautiful dining room table by candlelight, put on some soft background music, and feasted on a pound of shrimp, a jar of caviar, and a bottle of Chardonnay. When she had finished, she went into each and every room and stuffed half-eaten shrimp shells dipped in caviar into the hollow of all the curtain rods. She then cleaned up the kitchen and left. When Jake returned with his new girlfriend, all was bliss for the first few days. Then slowly the house began to smell. They tried everything, cleaning, mopping, and airing the place out. Vents were checked for dead rodents, and carpets were cleaned. Air fresheners were hung everywhere. Exterminators were brought in to set off gas canisters, during which they had to move out for a few days, and in the end, they even replaced the expensive wool carpeting. Nothing worked. People stopped coming over to visit. Repairmen refused to work in the house. The maid quit. Finally, they could not take the stench any longer and decided to move. A month later, even though they had cut their price in half, they could not find a buyer for their stinky house. Word got out, and eventually even the local realtors refused to return their calls. Finally, they had to borrow a huge sum of money from the bank to purchase a new place. Edith called Jake and asked how things were going. He told her the saga of the rotting house. She listened politely and said that she missed her old home terribly and would be willing to reduce her divorce settlement in exchange for getting the house back. Knowing his ex-wife had no idea how bad the smell was, he agreed on a price that was about 1/10 of what the house had been worth, but only if she were to sign the papers that very day. She agreed, and within the hour his lawyers delivered the paperwork. A week later, Jake and his girlfriend stood smiling as they watched the moving company pack everything to take to their new home, including the curtain rods. John's car broke down in the middle of a quiet road at night. He decided to hitchhike. After waiting for a while, a car stopped next to him. He jumped aboard. The speed of the car was slow and steady. Suddenly, John noticed to his shock that the driver's seat was empty. No one was driving the car. John was not frightened by the speed of the car, but by the fact that it had no driver. When the moment came, he jumped out of the car and ran for his life. After a few kilometers, John arrived at the gas station. He went inside and bought himself a drink. 2 men arrived at the gas station. One of them pointed at John and said, "Look, Jack, that's the idiot who jumped into our car while we were pushing it." This man was talking to himself. I wish I could meet some really important people before I die. A man walked up to him and said, "Hi, my name is Mike, and I overheard you. I can help you because I know everybody on the planet who is alive today." "No way. You must be pulling my leg. Let's go to Jane Hull so you can prove it to me," said the man. So they go to Jane Hull's office, and when she notices Mike, they start to talk about how they were in kindergarten together. "Okay, it could have been a coincidence that you were in kindergarten together. Let's go talk to the president," said the man. So they took a jet to the White House, where the president was having a press conference. When the president saw Mike, they started to talk about how they were in band together. "Okay, for your last test, let's go to the Pope," said the man. So they took a jet to Rome, and when they got there, they went to a church where the Pope was giving a sermon. After the sermon, Mike walked up to the Pope, and they shook hands and started to talk. When Mike walked back over to the man said, "You know, I had a hard time believing you, even after the Pope, until a guy came up to me and said, 'Hey, who is that standing next to Mike?'" A parrot accidentally swallowed a Viagra pill. Almost instantly, the parrot started acting all fired up, pacing back and forth in the cage, feathers ruffled and eyes wide. The owner, worried about the parrot overheating, quickly thought of a solution. He opened the freezer and gently placed the parrot inside, saying, "This will cool you down, buddy. Just stay calm." 20 minutes later, the owner opened the freezer door, expecting the parrot to be shivering. Instead, he found the bird drenched in sweat, looking even more exhausted than before. Confused, the owner asked, "What happened in there?" The parrot, catching its breath, replied, "Boss, you have no idea how hard it is to lift a frozen chicken's legs." A nun, really needing to go to the bathroom, walked into a neighborhood pub. The place was hopping with music and dancing, but every once in a while the lights would turn off. Each time after the lights would go out, the place would erupt into cheers. However, when the revelers saw the nun, the room went dead silent. She walked up to the bartender and asked, "May I please use the restroom?" The bartender replied, "I really don't think you should." "Why not?" the nun asked. "Well, there is a statue of a naked man in there, and his most private part is covered only by a fig leaf." "Nonsense," said the nun. "I'll just look the other way." So the bartender showed the nun the door at the top of the stairs, and she proceeded to the restroom. After a few minutes, she came back out, and the whole place was hopping with music and dancing again. However, they did stop just long enough to give the nun a loud round of applause. She went to the bartender and said, "Sir, I don't understand. Why did they applaud for me just because I went to the restroom?" "Well, now they know you're one of us," said the bartender. "Would you like a drink?" "But I still don't understand," said the puzzled nun. "You see," laughed the bartender, "every time the fig leaf is lifted on the statue, the lights go out in the whole place. Now how about that drink, sister?" So there were 3 mathematicians and 3 engineers. Oh, and they were all traveling to the same conference. At the train station, the mathematicians each bought a train ticket, and the engineers only bought one to share between the 3 of them. "What a bunch of idiots," the mathematicians said. "When the ticket master comes through, they'll be kicked off the train." Sure enough, on board the train, they could hear the ticket master in the next car saying, "Tickets, please." The 3 engineers ran into the train bathroom and closed the door. The ticket master came in and knocked on the door and said, "Tickets, please." They slipped the ticket under the door, and the ticket master moved on. "That's brilliant," the mathematicians exclaimed. "We should do that on our way home." After the conference ended and they were traveling home, the mathematicians all bought one ticket to share between them, and the engineers didn't buy any ticket at all. "What a bunch of idiots," the mathematicians said. "What are they going to do when the ticket master comes through? They'll be kicked off the train." On the train, they soon heard the ticket master in the next car saying, "Tickets, please." All 3 mathematicians ran into one bathroom and closed the door. All 3 engineers ran into the other bathroom and closed the door. As soon as both doors were closed, an engineer came out of the bathroom and knocked on the mathematician's door and said, "Tickets, please." After my retirement at the company I worked at for 50 years, I looked forward to some relaxation time and putting my feet up, but my wife had other ideas. She insisted I take her to the local shopping center every day. Like most men, I found shopping boring and preferred to get in and out. She's like most women. She loves to browse and leaves me with endless time to fulfill. Yesterday, my dear wife received the following letter from the local shopping center. Dear Mrs. Harris, over the past 6 months, your husband has caused quite a commotion in our store. We cannot tolerate this behavior and have been forced to ban both of you from the store. Our complaints against your husband, Mr. Harris, are listed below and are documented by our video surveillance cameras. June 15th, he took 24 boxes of condoms and randomly put them in other people's carts when they weren't looking. July 2nd, set all the alarm clocks in housewares to go off at 5-minute intervals. July 7th, he made a trail of tomato juice on the floor leading to the women's restroom. July 19th, walked up to an employee and told her in an official voice, code 3 in housewares, get on it right away. This caused the employee to leave her assigned station and receive a reprimand from her supervisor that in turn resulted in a union grievance, causing management to lose time and costing the company money. We don't have a code 3. August 4th, went to the service desk and tried to put a bag of M&Ms on layaway. August 14th, moved a caution, wet floor sign to a carpeted area. August 15th, set up a tent in the camping department and told the children's shoppers he'd invite them in if they would bring pillows and blankets from the bedding department, to which 20 children obliged. August 23rd, when a clerk asked if they could help him, he began crying and screamed, "Why can't you people just leave me alone?" EMTs were called. September 4th, looked right into the security camera and used it as a mirror while he picked his nose. September 10th, while handling guns in the hunting department, he asked the clerk where the antidepressants were. October 3rd, darted around the store suspiciously while loudly humming the Mission Impossible theme. October 6th, in the auto department, he practiced his Madonna look using different sizes of funnels. October 18th, hid in a clothing rack and when people browsed through yelled, "Pick me, pick me." October 22nd, when an announcement came over the loudspeaker, he assumed a fetal position and screamed, "Oh no, it's those voices again!" Took a box of condoms to the checkout clerk and asked, "Where is the fitting room?" And last but not least, October 23rd, went into a fitting room, shut the door, waited a while, then yelled very loudly, "Hey, there's no toilet paper in here." One of the clerks passed out. There were 2 buddies, one with a Doberman pinscher and the other with a Chihuahua. The guy with the Doberman pinscher says to his friend, "Let's go over to that restaurant and get something to eat." The guy with the Chihuahua says, "We can't go in there. We've got dogs with us." The buddy with the Doberman pinscher says, "Just follow my lead." They walk over to the restaurant. The guy with the Doberman pinscher puts on a pair of dark glasses and he starts to walk in. The bouncer at the door says, "Sorry, Mac, no pets allowed." The man with the Doberman pinscher says, "You don't understand. This is my CNI dog." The bouncer says, "A Doberman pinscher?" He answers, "Yes, they're using them now. They're very good and protect me from robbers, too." The man at the door says, "Come on in." The buddy with the Chihuahua figures, "What the heck?" So he puts on a pair of dark glasses and starts to walk in. Once again, the bouncer says, "Sorry, pal, no pets allowed." The guy with the Chihuahua says, "You don't understand. This is my seeing eye dog." The bouncer at the door says, "A Chihuahua." The man with the Chihuahua says, "A Chihuahua? They gave me a Chihuahua?" A Mexican, an American, and a Russian were flying together on a plane, each quietly brooding about their homeland. After a long silence, the Mexican sighed heavily, picked up a tin of soup from his bag, and hurled it out the window. "I hate my country," he muttered. "All we ever eat is soup." The American, inspired by the act, rummaged through his bag, pulled out a giant apple pie, and tossed it out the window, too. "I hate my country," he grumbled. "Everything's about pie and fast food." Not to be outdone, the Russian stood up, glared at the others, and then chucked a bomb right out the window. "I really hate my country," he said, slumping back into his seat. The plane eventually landed, and the trio went their separate ways. As the Mexican strolled through the city, he saw a young boy sitting on the curb, crying uncontrollably. Concerned, he knelt down and asked, "What's wrong, kid?" Through tears, the boy sobbed. "A can of soup fell from the sky. It hit my mom, and now she's gone." Horrified, the Mexican backed away, stammering, I didn't do that." Meanwhile, the American walked through a nearby park when he noticed a little girl crying next to a wrecked car. He knelt beside her. "What happened, sweetheart?" The girl sniffled. "My mom was driving, and this huge pie splattered all over the windshield. She couldn't see, and the car went over a cliff." The American's face turned pale. I didn't do that," he mumbled, hurrying away. Finally, the Russian walked down a quiet street when he noticed a young boy laughing hysterically, rolling on the ground. Curious, he asked, "Hey kid, what's so funny?" Between giggles, the boy managed to blurt out, "Daddy just farted, and the house exploded." A travel agent was wrapping up a successful week at his downtown office when he noticed an elderly couple standing outside, gazing longingly at the posters in his shop window. Exotic beaches, luxury cruises, and glamorous cities, all just out of reach for many, especially those on a tight pension. The sight tugged at his heart. Feeling unusually generous, he stepped outside and called to them, "Excuse me, would you both come in for a moment?" The couple hesitated, but eventually shuffled inside, looking around nervously. "I know traveling the world isn't easy on a pension," the agent began, "but I want to do something special. I'm sending you both on an all-expenses-paid trip to a 5-star resort. Flights, hotel, everything, on me, no strings attached." Their jaws dropped in disbelief. "Are you serious?" the old man stammered. "Absolutely," the agent smiled. "You deserve it." He called in his secretary to arrange first-class tickets and book a luxurious hotel suite for two. The couple left the office that day beaming with excitement, thanking the agent over and over. A month passed, and one morning, the little old lady returned to the travel agency, her face glowing with joy. The agent grinned as she walked in. "Welcome back. So how was your holiday?" "Oh, it was wonderful," she said, her eyes twinkling. "The flight was exciting, the resort was absolutely gorgeous, and the room, oh, it was so luxurious." "I'm so glad to hear that," the agent replied, feeling proud. "I wanted it to be special for you both." The old lady hesitated, then leaned in and whispered, "I just have one question." "Of course, anything." She looked around a little embarrassed, then asked, "Who was that old guy I had to share the room with?" An extremely rich man is sitting, contemplating his immense wealth. He has many luxurious things, everything inside and out, a huge mansion, a massive watch collection, an extensive antique display, and most importantly, a gallery of luxury cars. He, in high spirits, decides to add to his car collection and buys a brand new Lamborghini. He then spends the next 2 hours driving around, showing off his car and waving to pedestrians. Nearing the end of his day, he parks in a restaurant parking lot and gets out, but suddenly another car slides into the space next to him and rips the door clean off. The man, infuriated, yells in anger and whips out his phone and dials 999. He yells at the officer, saying, "This man just ripped the door clean off my new Lambo. I demand you send an officer. Arrest him. Lock him up." The officer replies, "Sir, this kind of issue doesn't deserve a 999 call. No, I paid very good money for this car, and I demand you send an officer at this instant." "All right, sir, he's on his way." When the officer arrives, the rich man is already all up in the officer's face, exclaiming how this ignorant man destroyed his new car. The officer yells back, "You disgust me. Your materialistic traits have kept you from realizing that not only did the door get torn off the car, but so did your arm." The man looks down at his arm and exclaims, "Oh no, my good Rolex is gone. Ah!" A pharmacist comes back from his lunch to the pharmacy. As he approaches, he sees a man outside the pharmacy clutching onto a pole for dear life, barely breathing, not moving, not twitching a muscle. Just standing there, frozen. The pharmacist goes up to his assistant and asks, "What's the matter with that guy? Wasn't he in here earlier?" "Yes, he was," replies the assistant. "He had the most terrible cough, and none of my prescriptions seemed to help." "Well, he seems to be fine now." "Sure he does. I gave him a box of laxatives. Now he won't dare cough."